When the young resident comes out and hangs up their shingle, if they're going solo, how are they going to make money? They're not going to have a full surgical schedule to start with. They need to learn skincare. They need to learn injectables. They need to learn all those things to make some money.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to get plastic surgeons more patients and more profits. Now, today's special guest is Dr. Michael Edwards. He's a board-certified plastic surgeon and founder of Plastic Surgery Vegas, and brings a combination of military leadership, academic contribution, and clinical excellence to his work. So Dr. Edwards completed his medical degree at the F. Edward Abar School of Medicine, followed by general surgery training at David Grant Medical Center, as well as plastic and reconstructive surgery residency at Wilford Hall Medical Center. And then, after serving nearly 2 decades in the United States Air Force, he transitioned into private practice, which I want to ask him more about. So Dr. Edwards is past president of the Aesthetic Society, formerly known as ASAPS, as well as published author in peer-reviewed journals. Now, he lectures nationally as well as internationally, and has played a role in advancing patient safety initiatives, including serving on the Nevada Board of Medical Examiners. Dr. Edwards, thank you so much for meeting me on Beauty and the Biz.
Well, thanks for having me, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it took me a minute to get you on here, but here you are. So I'm just so interested in hearing your transition from Air Force to solo practice, because it's such a completely different mindset, completely different business structure. So can you talk a bit about that? What was that like?
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. I've always liked being involved and being in learning from people I've worked with. And so when I went to medical school, before medical school, I was involved in so many different facets of medicine. I was a medical assistant. I was an ER tech. I worked driving ambulances, and then found my way working into nursing school. My wife and I put each other through nursing school. And then after that, I just kept going. And so there are a number of medical schools in the country, but I grew up in the Air Force. My father was in for 23 years, so I know what it was like to move every 3 or 4 years. So one of the schools that I applied to, which I really wanted as my first choice, was also called the Uniformed Services University, or F. Edward A. Bear, who's the senator who helped fund or get the school funded. And so I chose to go there. It's in Bethesda, Maryland, and I was commissioned as a second lieutenant during my 4 years of medical school, became a captain when I graduated, and went on to there. So all my training was in the Air Force. Some doctors do that through scholarship programs where they have a commitment to the Air Force. But I always enjoyed doing that. I was a little bit older than my colleagues in medical school because I'd gone through nursing school. So I really enjoyed the leadership aspect of it. I found myself always being kind of helping run things or being in part, because I always knew that we could make it run smoother if somebody took reins and did it. So when I got out and did my general surgery training, it's funny enough, I did my general surgery training near the high school town where my father retired. So here I am taking care of a lot of patients as a general surgeon. My patients were the parents of my high school classmates.
Wow.
And so that was aortas and gallbladders and hernias and all that stuff that you do as a general surgeon. And then I graduated there and left and went to San Antonio and went to Wilford Hall Medical Center, did a 3-year plastic surgery fellowship, and then got out and came to Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base. And so at that point, I was a senior major, still involved in leadership things, but everything's very regimented in the military, right, as it should be, because you have to have that to make things run smooth, whether it be in a hospital setting or when you're deployed and in the field. Someone has to know who's in charge, and that's how people follow commands and get things done. So in my 7 years of commitment that I owed after my training at Nellis Air Force Base, I served as a chief of surgery, a chief of plastic surgery. Then I was the chief of hospital services, which is if you will, the chief of staff, top doctor in the hospital. And again, these are all things that were just, I enjoyed. It made for long, long days, but again, very regimented. So when I got to the point where I knew I was going to be transitioning out of the Air Force, I lived in the same town, and my wife and I decided that we were going to stay in Las Vegas. So as you and I talked about earlier, it was a easier transition than trying to set up a practice in another town, states away, or what have you. So I was able to build out my office while I was still active duty, and literally from ground up, my wife and I built an office right next to a hospital here in town, a
Please tell
3,000.
me you bought the real estate
What?
20
No, we didn't. I had this many dimes to rub together at that time. So I went out on a limb financially just to build the office, let alone own it. I wish I did,
Yeah.
but I didn't. So we leased,
Okay.
built out a beautiful office, and as you and I spoke about, I literally, when I got out, I had connections already with patients that I had operated on as a military doctor, and their family members or friends heard of me through them. And so I literally, the week I got out of the military, I was operating. I had patients waiting for surgery. And so, it took some organization and planning and all that. But it was a relatively straightforward transition. I mean, I went from one day wearing a uniform to no vacation. We started working literally that left Friday, started work on Monday, and started private practice. So having good connections in town was helpful, but the transition for me, quite honestly, wasn't that hard to do. My wife jokes with me that I ruined her life by taking her out as a recovery room nurse, and then ask her to be our office manager. And anyone who works in an office or knows that it's not easy to do. There's HR, there's financing, and all those things. And I took her out of a wonderful environment where she got to take care of patients, and then had her. When she left work, she was off work, and she and I used to joke, or in fact, she used to joke in our practice where we were by ourselves, that she said it's like going home from work and living, what did we talk about dinner? We talked about work. And then when we go to bed, she said, it's like going to bed with you and 20 other women, because those are always who we're worried about or talking about, or people in various stages of recovery. But she was wonderful. I mean, a great nurse, a wonderful patient person, people person. And so our daughter worked for us as a receptionist for her first year. And so, like I said, it really wasn't that much of a strong transition for me, because again, being able to go from the same town, I was living in the same house. We didn't move. We owned our house, and then just opened the private practice. So I would definitely recommend that if somebody can.
How long did you do it on your own before you started adding associates or contractors or partners?
So for 12 years, I was in solo private practice, myself, my wife, and I think we had 3 employees.
Okay.
And over that time, my interest in surgery was all aesthetic. I started doing insurance, and unfortunately, insurance pays so poorly that it's hard to even pay your employees. And so I transitioned away from insurance-based to all aesthetic and cosmetic. And then one day I went to my wife's office and I said, I don't think I want to do facelifts anymore. I did everything. And she looked at me kind of aghast and said, "What do you mean?" I said, I think I want to focus on breast surgery." And so she stood behind me, and I did that. And I had a colleague in town that I was referring facelifts to. And it turns out that we ended up merging our practices after that 12 years. And so I merged with 2 other plastic surgeons. And then one of them went on to retire. And then there's so many stories. We opened during that time that I was by myself, I became very involved in the Aesthetic Society. And to do that, anyone who has done it can tell you it's a labor of love, because you are involved in so many late night phone calls and conferences and meetings. And I never didn't enjoy it. It was always fun being involved, whether you're in a committee for marketing for the society or committee for patient safety or what have you. And so what happened then was, at the tail end of my solo private practice, I was becoming president of the Aesthetic Society. It just so happened that's the way it worked. And as I mentioned earlier, at the same time, I had gotten involved, and I encourage a lot of young plastic surgeons to do this. I got involved with the local medical society. And they asked me, as time went on, to be the president of that. It was kind of my time as we were going along, and they were going to coincide. I said, "No, that's crazy. I can't do that. I can't do both jobs." And they said, "Oh, come on. The guy that was going to do it, he'll help out when you're not here." And well, anyway, for a year, I did both jobs in addition to full-time plastic surgery. and I don't think I slept the whole time. And so as I made that transition, that's the right when I picked up being president of both societies, I merged, and it was a blessing because I had wonderful partners and they could help watch my patients.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm rambling, but um, that's how I transitioned to going into a group practice or a partnership, if you will.
And then let's clarify the group practice idea, because a lot of times that doesn't work out as well as it was
Right.
supposed to. So you're in solo practice, you have your own way of doing things. You came from the Air Force, so you're pretty regimented. And
Right.
now you're in with two other surgeons. Did you come together as a partnership, or did you test it out first? How did that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a leap of faith. I mean, I knew both of them. I knew that they were, at that time, they were both excellent physicians. We shared a common goal, a common practice, and it was really the basis of taking really good care of your patients and providing good results. You know, it's fun to make a living and make, but for me, that was never. I mean, how lucky am I to have a job where I can make a good living, right, and do the things that I like to do? I say that every day. But they shared the same common value, and so it was somewhat difficult in the sense that they had their way of doing things, and I had my way, and here we are merging. So when I got together with him, I said, "Look, we need to." We met for a year and talked about it. It wasn't just overnight. We talked about it. We had meetings. We had consultants that helped us with it, contracts, attorneys, and all those things because I was coming with a boatload of clinical records and they knew that what I wanted to do was breast revision surgery. And for many plastic surgeons, they'll say, "Take it, that's yours," because it's a complex thing. And you know, I meet people that have had 12 and 15 surgeries, and they're still unhappy. And maybe I'm kind of foolish, but I always think I can make something better. And so anyway, it worked out well. And so they took care of the facial side of things. We had a dermatologist who is still with us as if you will, an employee, although she's been here longer than I have. And and it worked out. And I brought some organization into it where I said we need to start having departmental meetings because we've got this large administrative staff, a large medical assistant staff, and we need to know we need to have touch with. I mean, I'm no expert like you in terms of marketing and all that, but we need to have a better idea about what our employees are thinking. You can't just come to work and not have a touch to know that how phones are being answered and all those very very important things. And so it's been a work in progress since 2014 to where we get better and better and better all the time. And so when I was in that year of president of both societies, that's when the University of Nevada developed a medical school. And then there's a plastic surgery residency at here locally, UNLV. And one graduates a year, and we didn't have any relationship with them. I mean, I did kind of as an administrator, and I knew the doctors that way. But then something happened in that program where they lost the aesthetic educator of that program. It was just literally almost overnight. And so I came back to my partners and I said, "Look, we've got this wonderful practice. We're doing all this facial surgery, all this body contouring, all this breast surgery. We have a dermatologist." I said, "We owe it to to this residency to open our door and have the residents rotate with us." And so I got their permission first, and they went back to the chief of surgery at the hospital, and they said, "Of course." And that's been a blessing as well. The first resident that rotated with us was such a star that we brought him back, and he's now a full partner with the practice.
Oh, good idea. So are you a fellowship? Are you considered a
No, we're not, and that's something that I talked about for a while, but it just didn't happen. I mean, we could easily do it. I know some wonderful colleagues that do that and put out fellowship training programs or graduates, if you will. You know, Pat Maxwell, people like that have put out great training programs, and I always had thought about doing it, but we just never made that leap.
Well, it's just priceless for the new plastic surgeon who got zero business and marketing acumen, but they learned a lot of surgery, which is
Right.
fantastic. But nowadays, you've got to have both. You've got to have all three: the business, the marketing, the surgery skills.
You're right.
So I just think going through a fellowship for a young person has to be priceless at this.
Well, I think that my partner would tell you the same thing. The one that did. So when he graduated from the training program, he went and he knew he wanted to do 1 year of a fellowship, and he did that. And we were talking with him while he was in that fellowship, and then he came back and joined us. It was very seamless. We knew him. We spent a lot of time with him, and we, it's just like we'll talk about maybe in a bit about hiring. It's not about. They can be great surgeons. But it's really about what they have in their heart. Are they good people? Do they have great people skills? Do they get along with people, other employees? Can they play in the sandbox, if you will, with other people? And it's worked out well in that regard. But everyone has their strengths, and even further down the road. So I told you that the one partner retired, and so that left the three of us. And then as we started talking, as we do a lot, I talked about wanting to retire, which I'll do at the end of this year. We thought well ahead of time. And one of the other residents that had rotated with us, they spend a lot of time with us. So we really get to know them, get to spend time across the table in the operating room, in the clinic, watching them, how they interact with patients, how they interact with staff, for that matter. I mean, really, you can have a great doctor, but if they're a jerk, I don't want them in my office. I don't want staff hating them. And so, long story short, it's a woman, and she joined us after she went and did a rhinoplasty fellowship. So she's coming back. And so, to the fellowship point, she's really doing a breast fellowship with me because she's going to take over care of my patients from the past 25 years. And it's wonderful because we just operated all day today. And as we go through clinic, she's meeting every patient. And the patients have been notified about my retirement, but I get to introduce them to her. So it's going to be a seamless transition to someone who they can know and trust, and that they know that I trust. And so I think that gives them some solace.
And it gives the patients buffer room and transference of confidence, or credibility. It's right. Transference of credibility. So your patients love you. You love the new doctor. Now they'll love the new doctor. But you come together so far as a package, so the patients can get used to that.
Right.
What a nice transition, and not many do that. Oftentimes it's super abrupt, and the patients call and find out the surgeon retired. Right. Like, what the heck happened there?
Well, like I told you, when I decided to make my announcement, I chose to, after talking to other experienced colleagues. I chose to announce it a year ahead of time. And I thought that was fair to patients because I'd heard so many times patients asking me if I was retiring anytime soon. And I knew I was, but I didn't want to announce it 2 years ahead of time. And so I sent out a letter, which I spent a long time writing, and sent it out at the 1 year point, and our phones kind of lit up, as you and I spoke earlier about. And then as patients come in, I'm a hugger. I like people, and I really get to enjoy my patients and their families. And you just get to know them by taking good care of them. And so it's really a lot of fun to have them come back. A woman was literally yesterday in clinic. She was in tears, and I thought, "What is the matter?" She said, "You changed my life." Oh. And it was any surgeon would say, "Oh, it's a relatively straightforward surgery," but right. You don't know what somebody comes in with, right? And so if you get to know them, but anyway, it was very rewarding. And she didn't want new surgery. She just wanted to come in and tell me that she was thankful for what she and I had done together, and she was very happy. So it was very, very touching.
Hello, it's Catherine. If your practice feels busy but you're not seeing the growth you expected, there's usually a reason, and it's often something small that's quietly costing you revenue. That's why I offer a practice growth review. Now in this call, I'll take an objective look at your patient flow, conversion process, and retention strategies to identify where opportunities may be slipping through the cracks. You'll walk away with a clear picture of what's working, what's not, and the few changes that could make the biggest difference. If you'd like an unbiased set of expert eyes on your practice, simply visit catherinemaley.com to schedule your review. Well, I was on your Instagram, and that's when I found out you were going to retire. And I went, what? I didn't know that. So that was really, I like the way you're doing it. You're transitioning in a really smart way where nobody's shocked. Back to the partnership, though, I just find that interesting. When surgeons work together, now you've got 4 surgeons, 1 dermatologist, lots of staff. Like
3 nurse injectors, 3 aestheticians, and a whole host of other. We have 2. We built out 2 operating rooms upstairs. So it's a boy. talk about trying to build a great place to finish out your career. I'm so blessed. I mean, I really am. And
Do you buy that building?
no,
Oh,
no,
shoot.
I mean, there was consideration for that, and then COVID hit, but we did build out the operating rooms, and so my partners probably will into the future
Yeah.
buy something. I don't know, but no, I know that
I
would
mean,
be
I'm in
great.
California, and we all look at Nevada because the real estate there is so much better than California.
Well, of course, yeah.
I just wish I did it, sooner. I didn't, I
Yeah.
just didn't. But oh my gosh,
Let me go back to something else. So when the residents come to visit with us, they come and they spend 3 months. And so the way it's designed is they, in general, are 3 months with each of the surgeons. And so they get to learn different techniques of how we do things. I mean, every doctor, even though you work together, has a different flow of how they take care of their patients and how they like to run things, how they do photographs, how they do their records, all those things, how they interact with patients. But to your point earlier, I said to the residents when they come, look, if there's a great case you want to see, you're rotating with me, but Dr. Higgins or Dr. Silver has a case going on. Go learn, because they're doing wonderful reconstructive surgery in their training program, but we are give them the ability to learn aesthetics. And to that other point, I said, go spend a day with the dermatologist. Go spend half a day with one of the nurse injectors. Watch how they do that. Go spend a half a day, get a facial and see what it's like and learn that. Because if you're going to go out and go into an aesthetic practice, you should know skin. You should know all those tools, because when the young resident comes out and hangs up their shingle, if they're going solo, then how are they going to make money? They're not going to have a full surgical schedule to start with. They need to learn skincare. They need to learn injectables. They need to learn all those things to make some money. Plus, take better care of their patients.
For sure. How many square feet is your office now?
Oh, gosh, I think downstairs here we're about, I want to say 43 downstairs and about 3 something upstairs. So it's a big office. I mean, I remember when I first came over here, as we started talking about merging, I'd get lost because it was so big. I mean, I may be underestimating it. I haven't checked lately, because we built out, when I joined, we built out some additional gray space in the back. Mm. And then when COVID hit, we were working out of local surgery centers. Mm. And we were locked out of the surgery centers, like many doctors were. And so the doctors that had their own operating rooms were able to keep operating. Unless somebody took their anesthesia machine or something like that. That did happen to some of my colleagues in New York. So we put our heads together. We said, look, let's be smart about this. We're spending a lot of money on operating room time. Let's try and get back to ourselves. And we've never looked back. I remember going through my career and talking to colleagues who had operating rooms, and some of them even likened it to the old boat analogy: the 2 happiest days, the day you buy it and the day you get out of it.
On the podcast, I have interviewed hundreds, and nobody's ever regretted their OR itself for the convenience of it. They hate running the darn thing, and it's never the profit center you thought it was going to be. What if somebody would just tell them ahead of time, just FYI, this is not a profit maker. You're hoping that you can just break even. You're doing it for the time savings and the convenience and having the same staff and all the tools are in the same place. I mean, that's priceless, but
it is priceless. And I'll be honest with you, ours has turned into a bit of a profit center. We're certainly not in the negative, and all those things you mentioned are great benefits. We hired carefully our manager upstairs, so it's somebody that we knew that was a nurse from one of the surgery centers, and the staff were very careful. We'll talk about that perhaps in a bit, but hiring staff is critically important because you're going to spend a lot of time with them, right? And then group practice, purchase agreements, and all those things. There are ways you can make money. The other part I'll mention to you, I told you we kind of got a little bit more regimented when I joined the group. Mm-hmm. We continue to do so. We have surgical center meetings every couple of weeks where we talk about maybe nothing's going on, but maybe there's a shortage of given suture or one thing or another, and we come to a joint decision on what we're going to do because we share the cost of how we do it.
Is it equal partnership with everybody?
It is, right. It's and we have somewhat of an interesting format, at least for right now. It may change after I leave, but right now it's for the bare bones overhead. We split that now 4 ways. For other things, you pay more if you use more. And so we're not necessarily at this point penalized. Like I was traveling a lot, but
Yeah.
still managed to have a very busy operative schedule. So it wasn't much of a problem. But as long as you're contributing a certain amount, I mean, every month we look at it and see what percentage of the gross income each person is making, and we make decisions about that. I mean, it's all our uh, income sheets are about 16 pages long, and we sit and look at those monthly, like everyone should. And so, yes, we share in general, the finances are shared pretty equally for that. Now, if a doctor wants to bring out a different device, where
Right.
they want to, like we will be bringing into our practice sometime soon hair transplant, which is one of the rare things we don't have. But one partner wanted to do it, and so they purchase the machine and they'll do the administration of it, and they'll carve it out and do it on their own. But that's kind of rare in our office. We usually, like for laser purchases for the dermatologists, we share those costs.
Gotcha. And you surgeons you're meeting with each other every other week, not the whole team. You're meeting.
Excellent question. Right. So we have a number of meetings. So we have an office staff meeting. I think we do that at least. I mean, that's everybody. At least every 3 months. We meet
Good for
early in the morning.
you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. It's so helpful. And sometimes it's a compliance meeting. Sometimes it's a CPR BLS meeting. Sometimes it's just to kind of get together and realize new members of the team that are there, make sure they get introduced, because we don't want silos. You don't want people to be working and not knowing. So when we hire somebody, a medical assistant for that matter, I always enjoy those interviews, and all 3 doctors, well, now all 4 doctors, 5 doctors interview these employees. In addition to we have a senior nurse and administrator. I want to make sure that they know that even though they're coming in as a medical assistant, they need to know everyone else's job.
Yep.
And so every doctor has their own way, as I said, of doing things. And so we have a rotation system set up so that they rotate with the doctors. So if they have to come over and help Dr. X, or Dr. Y, they know how they like to do their dressings or their wound care, or if they have sutures to cut or what have you. Mm-hmm. So we want everyone to feel combined and also somewhat interchangeable.
But does it ever get a little sideways when, let's say, you have your own coordinator and your own surgical assist and your own admin person? Do you all start feeling cliquish and like us, them kind of thing?
That's an excellent question. So each doctor has a coordinator. So a given clinical day, I'll see a patient. I can see 9, sometimes 10 new patients a day, and it's a busy day. And so I see them. I like to spend an hour with patients, and they're staggered as I do it, plus follow-ups. And then as I finish, I have a little super bill, and I say, this is what I want this patient to have. Then it goes to the coordinator, and then they present the quote to them and talk to them. They're kind of the face of the practice at that point. Mm. Well, if they're with somebody else at that time and the other coordinators, they can do the very same thing. And so we want that to not be cliquish as we do it. That's a really good point. We don't want there to be silos. And so of the coordinators we have, any of them can present a quote on my patients because they know what I want, how I like to do things. And in terms of scrubs upstairs, even though like for a facelift or more intricate breast case, there's a scrub that I want in there, but any of them are trained. We have a new scrub now that is now a couple months into it, and she's doing wonderful. But she's properly trained up. She was never just kind of thrown in with the lions. So we want one person to be able to do everything. One person can scrub with a facelift. One person can scrub with body surgery. One can scrub with whatever, breast surgery. So we try really hard to make that not be the case, because I've heard so many stories of colleagues where they have a partnership, and I don't know how they can call it a partnership because they hate each other. They don't like working together. How can that be any fun, right? They're just cohabitating and sharing expenses.
Well, it's not an easy way to do life, when you're just dreading going to the office because there's so much drama going on.
Sure. Think how much time we all spend at work, right?
Right. Let's talk about staff, though.
Okay.
Give me some tips on hiring, firing, and motivating.
Yeah, it's interesting because I knew we'd talk a little bit about this, and we have a wonderful practice administrator. She has been with the practice 5 or 6 years before I've been here, so about 20 plus years into it. That's another thing. We have retention. Our nurse injector has been with us for now 23 years, and she has a waiting list that you can't believe. I couldn't get into her if I wanted. But so hiring people is very important. I give a course with Mark Jewell, Mary Jewell, and Robert
Oh,
Singer at ASAPS every year, and it was on
yeah.
practice management. And I always learn something every meeting. We just last year quit giving it after 20 something years.
Wow.
But hiring is probably one of the most important things you do, in addition to taking good care of your patients and providing good care, because that's somebody they're going to represent you on the phones. They're going to represent you and be your face to the patients. And so we meet with them. We certainly find out what their background is. Do they have experience? Have they been in other offices? And quite frankly, that's sometimes a negative, because if they're in an office where you think it's not somewhere where you'd want to give that kind of care, then you're retraining. So we want to check character. We want to check reliability. We want to check how do they present themselves? How do they interact with other people? You can always train somebody to do a skill, to bring patients back and to do dressing changes. So I think spending a lot of time doing it and not jumping into a hire just because you've got a shortage. I mean, it's better to be a little bit to circle the wagons and be a little bit shorthanded to find the right person, instead of just hiring just to get a body in place. Because I assure you, everybody that would be watching this, and probably even you, would say that they've made mistakes in hiring.
It's way more common to fill up that empty space. Surgeons can't stand that emptiness like that.
Well, no, and it's very true. And so we have to kind of help each other, right? Hold each other back and say, look, we need to hire and get the right person. And quite honestly, it's interesting. In the past 5 or 10 years, I'll just be blunt. The work ethic is not what it was. It's just not. I mean,
Yeah.
when individuals were getting this free money, let's say during COVID, you couldn't get them to come in for an interview. In fact, if somebody gets out and they're on unemployment, and I mean, there are wonderful people out there, great work ethic. Please don't, I'm not painting a broad brush, but we would have people schedule an appointment for an interview and just not show. And we believe, or I believe, so they could say to unemployment, hey, I'm looking,
Yep.
but they just don't show up.
I used to do HR services and I quit after that. I don't know what happened. I know what happened. People were handed a bunch of money. They didn't have to go into the office anymore. They could goof off and wear pajamas all day. It created a crazy entitlement scenario or mindset, or
Yes.
I mean, I do it all the time. Even when I'm hiring somebody, I'll have 3 interviews set up and one will actually show up.
Yeah.
And then now I've learned to do one on like Zoom, and she's got the nose ring and the tattoos, on her hands. And I can't help myself. I said, I am sorry. I can't do the nose ring. And they're so offended to me. And I say, I live in a very conservative world,
Right.
and this just isn't going to work. And
I wish you success. I hope you find a job that you like, but
Starbucks, go to Starbucks then, because that's not what we're doing here. And it's so difficult. I don't know what happened, but yeah.
Yeah. And so also the same thing is true when you're hiring for those watching that are looking to bring on a new associate.
Mm-hmm.
There are even doctors out there that, even though they worked hard in their residency, there's this concept of a work-life balance. And I think it's incredibly important, right? I have 2 great kids. But when I'm not whining, but I'm just telling it as it was. When I was in residency, I would be working long, long hours, and if I got a chance, I'd break away. I'd go do the baseball game, the Little League game, or I'd go to the Girl Scout meeting or the Pine Box Derby or what have you. But then I was going back to the hospital to finish my work. And I got 2 weeks off a year. That was it. That was in the military. That was just what was done. And there was no change in that. And then, though, when you meet some of the younger plastic surgeons, and they, their life is important to them, they don't want to work as hard. I've had as I've met friends around the country and talked to them about hiring new associates, they they hire somebody that they think is a star, and that person comes in. They don't want to take calls on the weekend. They don't want to. They just don't want to work hard. They don't want to work to try to. Gosh, I mean, you've been doing this a couple of years. To build a practice, you have to. I mean, golly, I was on the phone talking to obstetricians in town, to family practice doctors. I was offering to go give talks to their meetings to talk to them about the things that I offer. There were, the internet was going, but it wasn't what it is now. There was a website that served as an informational source for women with implants. And I volunteered to do like an hour and a half. I'd sit there and have my computer in front of me, and I would just get peppered with questions. So I'd finish a really long day, and then I'd go back and sit at my computer for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just answer questions. And probably never got many consults out of it, but I learned a lot as people asked questions. I got a few, but these are women from all over the country that would ask questions. And so I just don't know that the same work ethic is there. And really, I'm not trying to sound like the old gray-haired guy that I am.
No, I hear it all the time. And then they wonder why they're not doing as well as they should, because that's when I get the phone call when people aren't happy with their, success. And what they don't know is it's so uber competitive. When you were doing that, it wasn't even competitive yet. Now it's become so uber competitive. You really have to say to yourself, you can go home at 5, but just know you've got 3 competitors within a mile. They're going to stay, they're going to eat, sleep, and drink this because this is their life. So go ahead and do your work-life balance, but that's not how the world works.
You'll pay the price. I mean, the younger generation wants to be paid what they think that they're worth, but they don't want to work as hard.
Before they even lift a finger.
Yeah, well, right. It's a sense of entitlement. Listen, I've met some really well-trained plastic surgeons that are young who come out, and they are fireballs. They are at it. They are making things happen.
Good.
So again, I'm not painting with a broad brush, but we just, my colleagues have to be very careful as they go to hire somebody. And I some of them are so very frustrated because they're looking hard. Maybe they're working on their exit strategy to try to find someone to come and take over their practice, or to offload some of the work that they're doing. Maybe they're, getting into their late 60s and they want to slow down a little bit. But if they can't find somebody, I mean, I remember somebody came to me. I do preceptorship. Some doctors will come and spend a day with me, or the night before we do a lecture, and then they spend the day with me in the operating room. And some of them are residents, some of them are seasoned plastic surgeons. And I just like to share information. It's always fun to do that, right? If they leave with a pearl, my job is done. But I met a doctor who another doctor across country called me about it and said, "Hey, I saw that you had this person and trained there. What'd you think?" And I said, "Oh, they were great. They were very, they questioned things. They sound like they had a great fund of knowledge. They don't operate with me, they watch." And so I gave them a good mark. I said, "I don't know them more than that." Well, they ended up hiring this person, and it fell apart within 3 months. That person came in and did not have any intent on working hard. And it was eye-opening for me. It was a disappointment.
Well, that also opened the door to private equity, because I've been around long enough to watch. We're all getting older here, and now everyone's trying to figure out how to exit. And the old way was, you're an older surgeon, you brought in a younger surgeon, you all got along great, hopefully, and then he bought in, or she bought in, and it was a nice, smooth transition. Well, now it's not. Nobody wants to pay what you want, what you believe you deserve. It's just, did you look into that at all? This private equity?
The concept of goodwill is gone. I mean, your charts are not worth a whole lot now. There's a lot of doctors around, and patients will jump. So yes, we did. We as a group, we did our due diligence and spent almost a full year looking into it, and spent a little bit of money investigating it. And at the very end of the day, I did not. I said no. I'm not doing it, because for a variety of reasons, and I have a few colleagues that are happy with how they've done it, and they're different varieties, right? Again, private equity is one thing, and kind of the other. I won't even mention names or acronyms, but there are kind of almost like a group purchasing agreement where they come together and they share cost and marketing and all that stuff. And I think that can work, perhaps, the people in different parts of the country. There are good models out there that are thriving. But the true private equity model, I think I would say uh, go with great caution and look at every line of the document. Have an attorney that you know look at it before you dive, because somebody dangles a big chunk of change in front of you, but there's a big downside that goes along with that chunk of change. So I go to an eye doctor on an annual basis, and they were one of the first ones in our town to go that route. And he's more senior like I am, and it's hurt their practice a lot. Younger surgeons left because they their part of the pie is not the same as the senior person's part of the pie. So I just my caution when somebody calls me about it is go with eyes wide open, and it's not always the grass is not always greener right on the other side of the fence.
There's always a trade-off for everything, but one thing about surgeons, the reason you're in solo practice is because you yearn for autonomy, and you're going to lose that. And I don't think surgeons realize, I don't think you think ahead of time, you have to call somebody to buy something, like you have to ask permission now.
Right.
And I don't know many surgeons who are okay with that.
Right. And well, I mean, some will tell you that no, it doesn't work that way. They've left us alone. And okay, great. If that works for you, that's fine. But, and the concept and they say, oh, well, we'll take over the HR, we'll take over all that stuff. Well, next thing you know, you got half the staff you had before, and they're not happy. They're kind of autonomous. And that's not what we as plastic surgeons are. Our patients, and certainly our practice, this is a very highly personalized practice. Going back to hiring, the front desk person here is just as important as the scrub tech upstairs, because they represent, and you know this, but they represent you. We want them when the patient comes up, hey, how are you doing? Certainly respecting their privacy with other people in the lobby, but we want the patient to be excited to come and feel like they're seeing friends. And it should never be phony. It should be genuine. And if you can't do it genuinely, then maybe you need to go back and take a little vacation or something. I don't know, but
right. Well, I always call it fun medicine. And this is all about connecting with emotional patients who want to look good, feel great. If you keep that in context, it really shouldn't be that hard. Just be nice to people,
I was talking this weekend to a colleague who's just a little bit younger than me, but he's in a fairly prominent position in the central part of the country. And we were talking at a meeting, and he said, you know what, Mike, he said, we should not be running away from work. We should be running to work. And it really made me think for a second, because I do. I mean, we get tired, of course. But as I think about my patients, I really, in general, like my patients. I really have a nice relationship. Every once in a while, we all have complications, but those are the people that deserve a little bit more attention than someone who's having a great result and they're really happy. So I think being excited about work is helpful. And when you're not excited, maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe you should be walking away. And going back to retirement, I did not want to have it be that somebody was coming to me and saying, hey, maybe you need to take it easy, and maybe you need to take a few more days off. And so I wanted to do it on my terms, which is what I'm doing. And so
for sure.
On top
So
of the
let's
game.
talk about the marketing side of this. Do you market as a practice? Does every surgeon market themselves? Because with social media, the world wants to know the person's name, like
Right.
Google and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. They have to know our name.
Yeah.
So that has become very difficult to do it as a full practice, because now that there's not a name or a personality. How are you looking that up?
Each of the doctors has their own, if you will, Instagram account. I don't do TikTok. That's just, I don't like dancing in front of a camera. Or, more power to those that do it and
Right.
get by with it. That's fine. I've never, the doctors that videotape their surgeries and make a big game of it. I really think that's, I'm old fashioned, and I don't like that. I don't like it at all. You'll never see me in the grocery store in my scrubs. I just don't. I wore, when I was in the military and I wasn't in my battle dress uniform, the camouflage, I was wearing a tie because I just thought that was respectful to my patients. And people who see this are going to laugh about it and think I'm an old codger. But I think that, so we each have an Instagram account. You said you had looked at mine, and mine probably is as much my family it is patients. I'll on occasion put a patient before and after on there, or a patient testimonial or something like that. But I blend the two. And so perhaps that's the wrong thing to do, but I don't have the bandwidth to manage two, so I do it that way. We have a group account. We have a group Facebook page. Certainly, we have a website that we constantly are looking at. And going back to when you talked about partners and meetings and all that, we have one of our partners came on board and took over the marketing for the practice. It's the younger partner. And did a great job, revamped our website, and meets on I think they meet weekly to talk about our marketing ideology. And so we all approve post. We all approve the blog post. Like if there's a breast blog post, I review it and put my flavor on it before it goes out, but it has everyone's name on it. It's never, we're not trying to highlight individual doctors. So that's how we choose to do it as a practice. We choose to promote everybody as opposed to individually. And, we all stand alone, but.
Okay. When it comes to patient attraction, how are you? I would think at your time in career, yours would be basically word of mouth, hopefully, or most of it. What's the mix like? What's it like? Where are patients coming from for all of you?
The great majority is word of mouth. I mean, it really is. And I'm really proud to say that. We ask patients when they come in, and I'll tell you a funny thing, and but a lot of the people watching this will agree they've heard it. On one day, two patients, one after the other. Like sometimes we'll say, well, how'd you hear about me? Because I know that they didn't have a patient. And one woman said, and then the next exact person said the same thing. They didn't know each other. They said, ChatGPT said, you're the best plastic surgeon in the country. And I said, well, that's really nice. I said, I think I take good care of my patients. I said, there are a lot of wonderful plastic surgeons out there, but I just have to giggle because how does ChatGPT know who the best plastic surgeon is?
Because it's watching what everyone's saying about you. So you have over 700 reviews that they love that. They love your before and after photos. They love patient testimonials of people saying he's the best. That's what the secret is. You can't say you're the best, but if you can get your patients to say you're the best, that's what matters.
Right. A patient just wrote a review and called me Michelangelo yesterday. I thought that was kind of funny. But
nice. By the way, do you have some kind of a process for reviews and photos? Any tips and tricks on how you're getting the approval?
Yeah, good question too. So every patient that I meet, I take photos on. I take photos on them as a part of the intake process. Every patient I see gets photos taken, full set. The patient imaging software that I use is part of our patient management process. And it allows me, the pictures that are taken go up onto a screen and the patient gets to be dressed. I draw a little bit on them, but in general, when I'm going over where incisions and scars will be, where a breast implant goes, what I'm going to try to do to change the position of an implant, et cetera. And because 80 to 90% of my practice is breast revision. But anyway, that's a big part of it in terms of how I teach patients about what they're going to have as part of the clinic visit. And so that I was making kind of a joke about about ChatGPT, but yeah, you're right. We have a lot of reviews. How do we do that? Well, and I know what it was. You asked about pictures. So every person that comes in, they get pictures, and every person relatively early on in their post-op care, I asked them if they would give me permission to use their pictures. It's a little easier with breast pictures because their face is not in it. Now, if they have a lot of tattoos, that's different. But I've had patients with both arms covered in tattoos that were more than happy to let me use their pictures. So I do that from the get-go. And I keep a spreadsheet. When I give lectures, I talk about this for younger plastic surgeons, especially. As you gather those photo consents, keep it cataloged so you know by procedure. Put the demographics on your spreadsheet. So if you go to make an Instagram post and you want to pull up a given case, you can go right to that spreadsheet, know where it is, then go to your photos, pull the photos up, and properly post it. So I like before and after pictures, and I think that we have to be really cautious as we do that, protecting patients' privacy. I had a woman that came to me one time that she worked in another office, and she said the doctor used her pictures without her permission. She had left the office. So you can get in big trouble doing that, right? So we use pictures a lot. In terms of Google reviews, we ask patients if they would mind giving us a review. And certainly you're not going to ask somebody who's really disgruntled with you. You want to kind of work that through and win them over to knowing you're going to take care of them. But we ask patients, and some do. Some do it anonymously, and some do it wide open, and so are quite happy about it. So it's been something that, again, my partner who's taken over the marketing part of it, they set a goal and they said, we want to get the X number of reviews. And then we met and exceeded that. And so we're still trying to do it. And I am here to tell you that every one of those is a genuine review. We don't, I know of practices where I would promise you that somebody 3 to 6 months out in practice didn't have 100 reviews. That's just not possible. And it's really unfortunate that somebody would stoop to that, but it happens. But
well, it's going to get worse with AI as well.
oh my gosh. Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah. We're getting ready to wrap it up here. Tell us a crazy patient or staff story you care to share.
Oh my gosh. I probably have to go back to military days, but I mean, when I was a military surgeon in the middle of the desert, operating on trauma cases from blast injuries, et cetera, I had a patient that came in and asked me to pierce her nipples.
Oh
and
my
and she was active duty, and I, of course, said no. That's about the craziest. I mean, we take care of a whole host of patients here. Everybody from the mother who takes care of her kids and raises the family, to the physician, the judge, the attorney, et cetera. We have a wide range of people, and I think I'd be belying confidences if I said too much. But we've had patients. One time in my previous office, we had a back door that my wife would take patients down in a wheelchair to the car, and she left the door open because she wanted to get back in. Somebody walked down that hallway, and they were just checking doors. They opened the door, stole her purse, stole her keys, and then like within 15 minutes, they were buying something at a smoke shop, and then they went and rented a car, and then never returned the car. So there's a car rental company that my wife is no longer allowed to rent cars from because they still think that it was her fault.
Oh my God.
So that's a pretty crazy story.
Yeah. How does it happen so fast?
It was in the blink of an eye. She was down there for literally 5 minutes. And unfortunately, there are people in this world that are like that. They don't have the scruples or the morals.
I hate to hear that. Yeah, that is a shame.
But there's a lot of funny stories. I love it in our office when I'm in a clinic and I hear my staff laughing with patients.
Sure.
I mean, what more could you want, right? So.
Yeah. Last question. Tell us something interesting we don't know about you, and I will start it off. How long have you been married?
I have been married 48 years.
Unbelievable. Congratulations.
To my sweetheart from, we started, I was 19 when we met, and it just, it just clicked, and it's a give and take. And our kids are both now married and raising kids and have wonderful families. And we just said, our secret is that you have to choose your battles wisely, right? There's something that's always going to be a little bit more important to one person than the other, and you have to have the ability to let it give and let it go. Whether it's a guy I used to work with years ago who was a hunter, he wanted to hang a trophy, something on his wall, and his wife kind of initially didn't want to do it, and then she stopped and she goes, "Well, okay, it's real important to him," so they did it, and I enjoy my wife. I enjoy traveling with her. I look forward to seeing her when I get home. And that sounds kind of hokey, I know, but we enjoy things apart. But the other thing I'll tell you is that you asked about something that someone doesn't know about me. But when I decided to retire, we all want to keep our mind active, right? Reading is important, and exercise most certainly is important. But I took up playing the guitar.
Oh my God, good for you.
And let me tell you, it's not easy. But it's fun.
1,000 hours or 10,000 hours to get good at it?
Well, I mean, I think that you need that. And I certainly have not done that because you go home at the end of the day. And I have a guy that comes and gives me lessons. And we probably spend more time talking because we're very similar in age and all. But it's a gratifying thing to do. Plus, it's good for your fingers. I don't know who to quote, but it said that if you do intricate things with your fingers, it's going to keep your mind active. It's like reading a lot, but the more exercising, working on your balance, working on your diet, nutrition, that's always been important. But this is just something I took the extra mile. And my wife would call me a collector instead of a player at this point, but I'm going to prove her wrong.
Actually, I know several surgeons who are in bands.
Yes.
They find each other and they end up doing a band. And they said it's so different from what they do all day. It like changes their left brain, right brain kind of thing. And they said it has just been
No question. I mean, when I was in high school and before I met my wife at just tail end, I was a drummer, and my brother and I were in a band together, and we played at a lot of high school dances and parks and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But I wanted to choose a different instrument, so that's why I chose the guitar.
Good for you. Well, God, it has just been a pleasure. I hope you enjoy your retirement. Good for you. You had a long run. It sounds like you did all the things right, except for the real estate part, because Nevada was a killer place to buy real estate because nobody was there. Nobody knew about it.
Right.
And it just grew. And God, California runs there all the time to overpay. Anyway, if they wanted to get a hold of you, Dr. Edwards, what's your website is plasticsurgeryvegas.com.
That's correct.
And your Instagram is Plastic Surgery Vegas. Yeah.
Right. And my private is DRM Edwards, I believe it is my Instagram individually. But they can find us through the website as well.
Okay. That's going to be it for us, everybody. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, please do me a favor and subscribe and give me a good review at Beauty in the Biz. And then if you have any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at KatherineMaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at KatherineMaleyMBA. And with that, thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon. Top plastic surgery practices convert more than 80% of their consultations into surgery. Now, the difference usually isn't better patients, it's a better and more strategic consultation structure. Here's the real issue. You're already paying to generate those consults through marketing, staff, and overhead. But if your coordinator is not professionally trained to guide patients through the decision process, many of those qualified patients walk out the door never to be heard from again. That's lost revenue you've already invested to attract. So if you want your practice performing at the level of the top tier, invest in the people responsible for converting consultations. Learn more at convertingacademy.com.